All right, in this video, we're going to go over how to convert a fraction to a decimal. Okay, so whenever you're given any fraction, right, we know that that's a rational number because it's represented as a fraction. So, for example, let's say we have 2/7, right? That's a rational number because we can see it written as a fraction. But all fractions really mean division, right? So this is really saying 2 divided by 7. That's the same sentence as the fraction 2/7. And so if you're trying to do division by hand, if you remember from elementary school, you learned to long divide. So what we're going to do is do long division here. So we're going to say 2 divided by 7. Remember, whatever's being divided goes under the long division symbol, and whatever you're dividing by goes outside of it. But once you set this up, you can very clearly see that the amount of times that 7 is going to go into 2 is 0 times. As soon as you have something going into itself 0 times, you get to put a decimal point here, and you're going to be able to add zeros underneath the square root symbol. So now we're asking ourselves really, how many times does 7 go into 20? And 7 goes into 20 twice. So we're going to put our 2 up here. Well, 7 times 2 is 14. So we're going to end up taking 14 away from 20. So let's see, 20 minus 14 is 7. 6. So then we say, okay, well, how many times does 7 go into 6? Well, it doesn't. So we can come back up to our, we can just keep adding zeros. So we're going to bring down this next 0. So then you're going to ask yourself, okay, well, how many times does 7 go into 60? And the answer is 8. So you would put your 8 at the top. Let me try and pick a different color here. We'll just stick with orange. So 7 goes into 60 8 times because 7 times 8 is 56. So, right? So we're going to subtract 56 and we would end up getting 4. Well, 7 doesn't go into 4, so again, we add another 0, bring it down. How many times does 7 go into 40? Well, 7 goes into 45 times because 7 times 5 is 35. So you're not allowed to go over the number under the long division symbol. It's as close as you can come to that number without going over. So we're going to put our 5 up here and subtract our 35. So that gives us a remainder of 5. And so we're just going to keep going with this pattern. Well, how many times does 7 go into 50? Because we're going to just bring down another 0. The green is hard to see, so I'm going to skip doing the green this time. So bring down our 0. Well, 7 goes into 50 7 times because 7 times 7 is 49. So we're going to put 49 here, 7 up here, subtract that 49 from 50, so we have 1. And once again, we're going to continue our pattern, so we're going to bring down that next 0. So how many times does 7 go into 10? Well, it goes into 10 once. So we're going to take away 7. So we'll be left with 3. And you can keep doing this until you see some kind of pattern in your decimal or go for long enough that you can determine that it's never ending or repeating. Okay, so once again, we're going to bring down the next 0. So 7 goes into 30 4 times, which is 28. So we're going to get a 2 here. We're going to bring down our next 0. I'm trying to remember the pattern here. Okay, so our 0. Well, 7 goes into 20 twice. So now we're going to take away 14, and we're going to get 6 again. Right here is where you can see a pattern start to emerge because previously we already had 20 right here, and we subtracted 14 and we got 6, and now we're back to getting 20, subtracting 14, and we had 6. So we can kind of guess that this part of our decimal all the way until that 2 is going to end up repeating itself because we're going to say, well, how many times does it go into 60? And then we're going to end up saying 8 again, and then we're going to subtract our 56, and we're going to get 4. So this whole process is going to repeat again. So it would be like 285,714, 285,714, right? So part of the reason I use this as an example is because it's written as a fraction, so we already know it's going to be rational. So we know that at some point it's either just going to end or repeat. So now that we saw that 2 again in our answers up here, we know that that's when it starts to repeat. So we can now say that 2/7 written as a decimal is equal to that 0.285,714 repeating. You put the repeating line over any portion that's repeating. So if just the 4 was repeating, then we'd only put it over the 4, but that entire pattern is going to repeat, so we're going to put it over the entire thing. Sevenths is one of the, I would say, worst decimals to convert from a fraction to a decimal. So let's do another one. Let's do maybe like 1/8. And so if we want to divide 1 by 8, we're putting 1 under our long division symbol, and we're going to have 8 outside of that. And we're first asking ourselves, well, 8 doesn't go into 1, so we're going to put a 0 at our decimal, and now we can start adding zeros underneath the long division symbol. So how many times does 8 go into 10? Well, it goes in once, so we're going to subtract 8, which gives us 2. All right, well, 8 doesn't go into 2, so we're going to add a 0, bring it down. Well, how many times does 8 go into 20? That's twice, so that's minus 16. So then we're left over with 4. Again, we're going to bring down another 0. Well, 8 goes into 45 times, and 8 times 5 is 40, so we're going to minus 40, and then we get 0. So that one's super nice because now our decimal ends instead of repeating, so we know that 1/8 is exactly equal to 0.125. And since that decimal ends, that would mean that that's a rational number as well. You can convert improper fractions to decimals as well. So let's say we can scroll down and make a new example here. So if we want to convert like 15 thirds, well, no, I don't want to do 15 thirds. Let's do 15 fourths, right? So now we're saying, okay, well, what is 15 divided by 4? We want to convert that to a decimal, so we're going to put 15 underneath our long division symbol and the 4 out front. Now this time, 4 actually does go into 15 since we had an improper fraction. So 4 goes into 15 3 times. We would take away 12, and then 5 minus 12 is 3. But now we're at the point where 4 doesn't go into 3. So now we're going to add our decimal up here and add a 0. And now we're going to say, well, 4 goes into 30 how many times? And the answer to that is 7, because 4 times 7 is 28. We're going to subtract 28, have 2 left over, right? We're going to bring down another 0. So 4 goes into 25 times. So we're going to subtract 20 because that's exact. So we would get 0. So now we know that 15 over 4 as a fraction is equal to exactly 3.75. All right, hopefully this video helps you understand how to convert from a fraction to a decimal. If you are having more trouble with the long division portion of it instead of just the concept of like, okay, well, I need to take my numerator and divide it by my denominator. If the process of long division is confusing to you, go ahead and